Inside Brian Laundrie and Gabby Petito's life with his parents. Brian Laundrie update: Father begs reporters to let me grieve as lawyer says no funeral will be held. Stephen Bertolino, the lawyer for Chris and Roberta Laundrie, said Brian Laundrie will be cremated when the time comes and without a funeral. His parents acknowledged the death of their son in a short and unemotional statement on Thursday, released through their lawyer Mr. Bertolino, asking for privacy. Mr. Bertolino wrote on behalf of the Laundries, "We have no further comment at this time and we ask that you respect the Laundries' privacy at this time." The Petito-Schmidt family attorney Rick Stafford said they would not make any statements on the identification of Gabby Petito's former fiancé until they're emotionally ready. The FBI confirmed Mr. Laundrie's remains through dental records, suggesting he had been dead for a significant period of time before his remains were found. It was revealed earlier that the remains found were bones and that it might take some time to make a positive identification. His belongings, which include a notebook and a backpack, were however described as salvageable and may yet provide further clues. A comparison of dental records confirmed that the human remains found at the T. Mabry Carlton Jr. Memorial Reserve and Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park are those of Brian Laundrie, investigators said in a statement. The Petito family attorney, Richard Stafford, told Fox News reporter Michael Ruiz that the water bottle that a TikTok user found on a hike was identical to the bottle in Gabby Petito's YouTube video. While there has been no official confirmation that the water bottle did belong to Ms. Petito, her family's attorney told Mr. Ruiz it could have been hers. "It looks like hers," he said. "We have a picture that's from before she left for her trip. It looks like that bottle. I don't know why it would be left there." A statement from Northport Police Department spokesman Josh Taylor said, "As far as I know, nothing related to this case has been found. Bunch of false reports." However, this is an FBI-led investigation and they should speak to anything such as that located. Police installed cameras around Laundrie's house. Police put up hidden cameras around the Laundrie's house and in their neighbor's backyard after his disappearance. According to NewsNation Now's Brian Anton, Northport Police put some of the cameras up sooner and before Brian disappeared. Northport police officer: "This case from the onset has been odd." An officer from Northport Police said that the case has been odd from the start. Speaking in an interview with Brian Anton from NewsNation Now, Josh Taylor from the Northport Police explained, "This case from the onset has been odd. We've said odd over and over again." When asked whether or not he thought it was unusual that Brian Laundrie's parents were in the reserve when his remains were discovered, Mr. Taylor said, "I think it is a coincidence, that's my belief." On whether the police has intended to keep closer tabs on Mr. Laundrie, Mr. Taylor commented, "No, our intention was to keep an eye on Brian and clearly him going out there, we missed him going out there." The Northport Police Public Information Officer went on to suggest that the cause of Mr. Laundrie's death will eventually be determined. When questioned, he said, "I think that'll be something that they piece together. There was bones scattered around, so I think you have to put all that back together and then work on those details." Brian Laundrie: Everything we know about Gabby Petito's boyfriend. Human remains found inside the Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park on Wednesday have been confirmed as belonging to Brian Laundrie. The FBI confirmed on Thursday afternoon they had been able to match Mr. Laundrie's dental records to the skeletal remains, which were found near a backpack and notebook belonging to the missing fugitive. On October 21, 2021, a comparison of dental records confirmed that the human remains found at the T. Mabry Carlton Jr. Memorial Reserve and Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park are those of Brian Laundrie. The FBI's Denver office tweeted, "Laundrie cause of death could be very difficult to determine." Brian Laundrie's cause of death could be incredibly hard to determine, according to Jennifer Shen, forensics expert and former director of the San Diego Police Crime Lab. Speaking to the U.S. Sun, she said that due to the remains being at such an advanced stage of composition, it could be hard to work out what caused Mr. Laundrie to die. She explained, "Any time a body has been exposed to the elements, particularly ones as devastating as those found in swampy water, physical clues leading to cause of death, information about injuries, and sometimes the ability to identify a body can be very difficult to find." Adding, "In this case, investigators knew who they were looking for, and dental records were readily available. This is what allowed them to quickly identify the skeletal remains as Brian's." Ms. Shin went on to explain that unless Mr. Laundrie's remains were to show signs of severe trauma to the skeletal structure of the body, it will be very difficult to determine what the cause of death could have been. hanging, overdose, positional asphyxiation, all will be difficult, if not impossible to determine as the mechanism of death, she went on. To make things even more complex, there is likely to have been significant animal activity, perhaps leading to missing limbs, or adding damage to the body not related to cause or manner of death. Crime scenes critical in investigation. Some of the most important components in working out exactly what happened to Gabby Petito are the crime scenes, said Paul Belli, a retired lieutenant of the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office and president of the International Homicide Investigators Association, reported CNN. Ms. Petito's autopsy revealed that she died by manual strangulation, with the coroner, Dr. Brent Blue, explaining, "Throttling means that someone was strangled by human force. There was no mechanical force involved." He also added that her body had likely been in the wilderness for around 3 or 4 weeks prior to its discovery. According to Mr. Belli, clues such as fingerprints could help to reveal who was responsible for Gabby's death, although whether or not fingerprints are collected depends on the condition of the remains. Mr. Belli explained that as the pair were in a relationship, you would expect DNA on either one of them from the other. He added, "But I mean, if there's DNA maybe where it shouldn't be, that could be kind of a clue as to what may have occurred. So there are ways to absolutely at least get you to a point where you're like, okay, this definitely makes sense, this is the person who did this crime," he said. Gabby Petito's brother shares tribute to her on Instagram. Gabby Petito's brother, TJ Schmidt, posted an image of sky lanterns being released in memory of his sister Gabby. TJ is the only sibling that Ms. Petito shared both her parents with. Writing above his post on Instagram, he said, "Lighting up the sky for you, Gabs. Love you forever." Laundrie family won't hold funeral for Brian but plan meeting to grieve. The family of Brian Laundrie was meeting on Sunday to grieve, their lawyer told The Independent, but there are no plans to hold a funeral for the 23-year-old in the future. Mr. Laundrie was at the center of an interstate manhunt before his remains were identified last week in a Florida swamp. The Long Island native was wanted in connection with the death of his girlfriend, Gabby Petito, who had last been heard from at the end of August. Laundrie family won't hold funeral for Brian but plan meeting to grieve. The remains of Brian Laundrie, identified last week, will be cremated and returned to his family, lawyer says. Gabby Petito Foundation announces yearly high school scholarships. The Gabby Petito Foundation announced a yearly scholarship opportunity for a student graduating from her hometown schools on their website. The statement on the website said that the Gabby Petito Scholarship's goal is to award a $1,000 scholarship to a graduating senior pursuing a future in the visual or performing arts. It added that the recipient will personify Gabby's youthful and free-spirited likeness and be chosen by the peers of the art program. Why Laundrie remains are being studied by forensic anthropologist. A forensic anthropologist has explained how finding clues to indicate Brian Laundrie's cause of death will depend on whether he suffered injuries that affected his bones. Dr. Aaron Kimmerl, an associate professor of forensic anthropology at the University of Southern Florida, told NewsNation Prime, "If it turns out that it was something that only affected soft tissue, or if it's something that involves only toxicology, then I think that's where the question remains in terms of what they'll be able to figure out." Last week, Brian Laundrie's skeletal remains were found in Myakkahatchee Creek Environmental Park. Stephen Bertolino, the attorney representing Brian Laundrie's parents, told reporters that the remains were sent to an anthropologist because the medical examiners could not determine a cause of death themselves. Mr. Kimmerl said, "It's very common for forensic anthropologists to get involved anytime there is decomposing or skeletonized remains. We work as essentially expert witness or scientific witness for medical examiners." It was reported that the medical examiner had only bones and a partial skull to work with. Police have said that they'll eventually find out the cause of Brian Laundrie's death. Meanwhile, Mr. Kimmerl also answered questions on whether anthropologists can tell if Laundrie's remains were tampered with. If they can properly excavate that scene, then you get a lot of that information and context back, and so that would be the key for trying to make interpretations about the circumstances surrounding death, he said.